Commander Ala Rhodess had always understood humanity's position as newcomers in the vast galactic community. 70 years of affiliation with the Confederation constituted a mere blink compared to races that had navigated the cosmos for millennia. Yet she hadn't anticipated the sheer degree of condescension. "Commander, perhaps you could document this," suggested General Octavian, his 8 crystalline appendages shimmering with a faint bioluminescence, signaling mild amusement among the Zeraxians. "Your species possesses such a peculiar knack for record-keeping." Around the expansive circular command table of the GCS Vanguard, delegates from 27 distinct species exchanged glances that transcended biology, the universally recognized expression of beings indulging someone they considered primitive. Ala maintained a neutral facade as she produced her compact leather-bound journal and a conventional ink pen, while her fellow officers utilized quantum-linked neural interfaces and holographic displays. She had always preferred the dependability of physical paper. Now, predictably, this preference was being construed as further evidence of human unsophistication. "As I was explaining," continued Admiral Keck of the Meko Collective, his vocalizer unit producing perfectly modulated tones through his metallic exoskeleton, "the Vrexian assault on Outpost Epsilon 9 was unlike anything previously encountered. Their novel neural disruption field technology effectively incapacitated 97% of our defensive systems, shields, targeting arrays, communication networks, all rendered inoperative." Ala diligently took notes, disregarding the occasional patronizing stare from General Octavian. She had been assigned to the Vanguard 6 months prior as part of the Human Integration Initiative, but thus far had been afforded little beyond observer status. The irony was not lost on her. The vessel itself was a monument to compromise, a patchwork of architectural and engineering concepts from over 24 species that somehow managed to function despite its disparate origins. "What about analog systems?" Ala inquired, glancing up from her notebook. A silence descended upon the chamber. 27 species turned to regard her, their expressions ranging from puzzlement to overt pity. "Analog." General Octavian repeated the term as if it left an unpleasant taste. "Commander Rhodess, the Confederation has not relied on outdated analog technology for more than 3 centuries. Even your own species abandoned such antiquated methods decades ago upon joining the galactic community." "With due respect, General," Ala persisted, "if the neural disruption field specifically targets quantum entanglement processors and AI-governed systems, wouldn't non-networked, physically controlled mechanisms remain unaffected?" Admiral Keck's sensory apertures widened in what Ala had come to recognize as the mechanoid equivalent of an eye roll. "Commander, perhaps you fail to grasp the situation. Vrexian technology isn't merely jamming signals. It's inducing a cascading failure across all advanced technological interfaces. There is no fallback option here." "Of course," Ala replied softly, returning to her note-taking. As the meeting proceeded, reports from the front lines grew increasingly dire. 3 additional outposts had fallen, and the Vrexian Empire was advancing steadily toward Confederation core systems. The assembled leadership spent hours debating increasingly intricate technological countermeasures, each requiring more advanced quantum computations than the last. Ala listened, sketched, and occasionally posed questions that were met with condescending explanations. By the conclusion of the session, the proposed plan involved reallocating 70% of the Confederation fleet to establish a cascading quantum shield that might disrupt the Vrexian field. As the commanders departed, General Octavian paused beside Ala's seat. "Commander Rhodess," he said, his voice lowered now that they were nearly alone, "I understand humans still value, what is the term, good feelings. Do these primitive instincts of yours offer any glimmer of hope for our countermeasure strategy?" Ala carefully closed her notebook before responding. "With respect, General, I believe we are overlooking simpler solutions. The Vrexians have discovered a method to weaponize our technological sophistication against us. Perhaps the answer is not to become even more sophisticated." "Are you suggesting we wage an interstellar war with sticks and stones, Commander?" Octavian's bioluminescence pulsed in patterns of amusement and disdain. "Not precisely, sir," Ala responded. But I am suggesting we consider alternatives that do not rely entirely on quantum computation and AI-driven systems. General Octavian's crystalline form stiffened slightly. Commander, the Confederation unified 27 species through our shared embrace of advanced technology. We have moved beyond the primitive methods you seem so fond of. When the Vrexians breach our quantum shield and come for us directly, where is your backup plan? Where is your backup? Ala held up her notebook. You're looking at it, sir. The general's bioluminescence flickered in what Ala recognized as the Zoraxian equivalent of a scoff before he turned and glided from the room. Alone in the vast conference chamber, Ala leafed through her notes and sketches. While the others had been proposing increasingly complex solutions, she had been drawing diagrams of much older technology: radio transmitters, ballistic projectile weapons, mechanical targeting systems, and hardwired communication networks. Technology too fundamental to be affected by the neural disruption field. As she closed her notebook, the ship's warning system activated. Attention all personnel, multiple Vrexian vessels detected in Sector 5. Estimated time to intercept, 6 hours. All command staff report to battle stations. This is not a drill. Ala tucked her notebook into her uniform pocket and headed for the bridge. She suspected they would require her primitive ideas sooner than General Octavian anticipated. The corridors of the GCS Vanguard were a testament to interspecies compromise. Sections constructed for differing gravities, atmospheres, and biological necessities, all connected by transition chambers and adaptive walkways. Under normal circumstances, it was an elegant, if occasionally perplexing, display of unity. Now, as crew members from 27 species hurried to battle stations, it felt chaotic and inefficient. Ala made her way towards the bridge, maneuvering around a group of auxiliary technicians whose gelatinous bodies quivered with anxiety. The ship's AI was broadcasting updates in 27 languages simultaneously, creating a cacophony of alerts and instructions. On the bridge, General Octavian hovered at the central command platform, surrounded by holographic displays depicting the approaching Vrexian fleet. Admiral Keck stood nearby, his metallic appendages directly interfacing with the ship's tactical systems. Commander Rhodess? Octavian acknowledged her arrival without diverting his gaze from the displays. I presume you have come to observe our response to the crisis. I've come to assist, General, Ala replied, taking her designated station near the rear of the bridge. Her console was notably simpler than those used by the other officers, a concession to humanity's supposedly less advanced neural processing. The quantum shield is nearing full power, Admiral Keck announced. We've rerouted energy from non-essential systems and increased computational resources. Theoretical models suggest a 73% probability of neutralizing the Vrexian disruption field. Ala studied the tactical display. The Vrexian ships were approaching in a classic pincer formation, designed to ensnare the vanguard between two zones of fire. It was a strategy as ancient as naval warfare on Earth, which suggested to Ala that for all their advanced technology, the Vrexians still grasped fundamental tactical principles. Admiral, she said, have we considered that the Vrexians might have foreseen our quantum shield? Their disruption technology specifically targets our most advanced systems. Admiral Keck's sensory apertures narrowed. The quantum shield is employing a completely novel configuration. There is no way they could have predicted it. They predicted our standard defenses at Epsilon 9, Ala interjected, and at the 3 outposts that fell afterward. Each time we responded with more advanced technology, and each time they were prepared. General Octavian turned to face her, his crystalline structure catching the light from the tactical displays. Precisely what are you suggesting, Commander? I'm suggesting we develop a backup plan that does not rely on quantum technology whatsoever. Ala produced her notebook and turned to a diagram she'd sketched during the earlier meeting. We still have electromagnetic railgun technology on board. Yes, originally installed for debris clearing. Yes, but those are maintenance tools, not weapons, Admiral Keck replied dismissively. They could be, Ala insisted. With minimal modifications, they could fire kinetic projectiles. No quantum guidance needed, just basic ballistic calculations. Ballistic weapons. General Octavian's bioluminescence flashed in patterns of disbelief. Commander, this is not some primitive planetary skirmish. This is interstellar warfare. Exactly, Ala stated. And currently the Vrexians have found a way to nullify our interstellar technology. So perhaps we need to think less. Interstellar! Before General Octavian could respond, the tactical officer, a Thrillaxian with 6 eyes arranged in a circle around its head, called out an alert. Vrexian fleet has increased speed, new intercept time, 2 hours. The bridge erupted in activity as officers adjusted their calculations and systems. Ala used the moment to access ship schematics from her console, searching for other potential primitive technologies that might still function under a neural disruption field. To her surprise, she found several. The ship's initial design had incorporated numerous redundant systems, many of which had been replaced or upgraded over time but never removed. There were hydraulic door mechanisms, analog communication systems, and even a physical navigation backup utilizing stellar cartography and optical sighting instruments. Commander Rhodess, General Octavian's voice cut into her thoughts. Since you appear so concerned about backup systems, perhaps you could review the emergency evacuation protocols for the crew. We must be prepared for all contingencies. It was a thinly veiled dismissal masquerading as an assignment. Ala recognized the political maneuver, keep the human occupied with something trivial while the actual officers managed the crisis. Yes, General, she replied, maintaining a neutral tone. She transferred the evacuation protocols to her personal device and continued her covert survey of the ship's older systems. If her suspicions were correct, they would need every piece of pre-quantum technology they could salvage. 2 hours elapsed with mounting tension. The Vanguard's quantum shield was fully operational, forming a shimmering energy barrier around the colossal vessel. Fleet communications reported that other Confederation ships were moving into supporting positions, all implementing similar defensive measures. Vrexian fleet dropping out of FTL, the tactical officer announced. 30 vessels detected. Lead vessel is significantly larger than any previously encountered Vrexian ship. The main view screen shifted to display the approaching fleet. At its center was a massive ship shaped like a serrated blade, its surface rippling with dark energy patterns. That's their flagship, the Admiral stated unnecessarily. Sensor analysis suggests it's the source of the most potent disruption field we've yet encountered. General Octavian's crystalline form seemed to sharpen as he concentrated on the tactical situation. All systems at maximum readiness. Prepare to engage the moment they come within range. Ala watched as the distance between the fleets steadily diminished. Something about the Vrexian formation unsettled her, but she couldn't quite identify it. They seemed to be holding back, allowing the Vanguard to ready its defenses. They're letting us set up the quantum shield, she realized suddenly. They want us to commit our resources to it. She attempted to vocalize her concern, but at that instant the Vrexian flagship emitted a pulse of dark energy that rapidly expanded toward the Confederation fleet. Disruption field detected, called out the sensor officer. Impact in 10 seconds. Quantum shield at full power, Admiral Keck reported confidently. Disruption should be contained. Ala wasn't convinced. She quickly secured her tablet and notebook in her pockets and braced herself against her console. The disruption wave struck the quantum shield with a visual effect akin to oil spreading across water. For a brief moment, the shield held, its energy patterns distorting but maintaining integrity. Then, with abrupt simultaneity, every quantum-based system on the bridge flickered and died. The main lighting failed, plunging the bridge into darkness before emergency chemical lights automatically activated, bathing everything in a dim red glow. The holographic displays vanished, the neural interfaces went inert, and even the artificial gravity fluctuated momentarily. Status report, General Octavian demanded, his bioluminescence now the brightest illumination on the bridge. No one answered immediately. The officers were desperately attempting to reactivate their consoles and interfaces, but nothing was responding. Total quantum systems failure, Admiral Keck finally reported, his voice box producing a flat tone that indicated he had switched to backup power. The disruption field penetrated our shields as if they weren't present. That's impossible, Octavian insisted. Our shield was specifically engineered to counter their technology. And they clearly anticipated that, Ala said, rising from her station. While the others were still reeling from the system's failure, she had pulled out her notebook and was flipping through pages of contingency plans. General Octavian turned to her, his crystalline form rigid with what might have been anger or fear. Do you have something constructive to offer, Commander, or merely observations? Actually, sir, I do. Ala approached the central command platform. We need to transition to analog systems immediately. The Vrexians have clearly developed a method to target quantum technology specifically, but they may not be prepared for more conventional responses. What analog systems? The Admiral demanded. Everything on this ship operates through quantum networks. Not everything, Ala replied. She tapped commands into her tablet, which was still functioning due to its relatively primitive processor. There are backup systems throughout the ship, originally installed as fail-safes during construction. Most haven't been used in decades, but they should still operate. The bridge officers exchanged skeptical glances, but as the seconds ticked by with no recovery of their primary systems, desperation began to supplant doubt. Explain quickly, Commander, General Octavian ordered, his tone notably lacking its usual condescension. Ala displayed a schematic on her tablet. The ship possesses hydraulic control systems that can manually operate essential functions like life support and basic maneuvering. There's a radio communication network that uses simple electromagnetic waves rather than quantum entanglement. And those maintenance railguns I mentioned, they can be modified to fire kinetic projectiles using electrical current rather than quantum guidance. And you expect us to operate all this antiquated equipment manually? The Admiral asked incredulously. Do you have a superior suggestion, Admiral? Ala countered. Because right now the Vrexians are closing in, and we are essentially defenseless. As if to underscore her point, the ship shuddered as something struck its now unshielded hull. General Octavian's bioluminescence flickered rapidly, a sign of internal conflict among Xeraxians. Finally, he stated, Proceed, Commander Rhodess, but understand that you are now accountable for this ship's survival. Ala nodded grimly. First, we need to establish communication with the rest of the fleet. If the Vrexians can disable our systems this easily, the other ships are likely in the same predicament. She led a small team to an access panel near the back of the bridge, revealing an old-style radio transmitter that had been installed during the ship's original construction and subsequently forgotten. While Ala worked to activate the device, she delegated other tasks to the bridge officers. Admiral, your species has experience with mechanical interfaces. Can you access the hydraulic controls for the maneuvering thrusters? We need to alter our position to avoid being a static target. The mechanoid nodded reluctantly and moved toward another access panel. General Octavian, we require your people's computational abilities. The railguns necessitate ballistic calculations, simple physics, but we need precision. For once, the general did not argue or condescend. With their advanced technology neutralized, even the most sophisticated species on board were beginning to acknowledge the value of Ala's primitive knowledge. As they worked, the ship continued to shudder under occasional impacts. Without their quantum sensors, they had no means of knowing precisely what was hitting them or the extent of the damage being sustained. Ala could only hope that the Vanguard's physical armor was holding. After several tense minutes, the radio crackled to life. Ala adjusted the frequency, searching for any Confederation signals. This is Commander Rhodess of the GCS Vanguard, she transmitted. All ships switch to emergency radio frequency and respond. Static filled the air. Then, gradually, responses began to arrive. As Ala had suspected, the entire Confederation fleet was experiencing the same systems failure. Some ships had already commenced implementing backup measures similar to what she was proposing, but many were still paralyzed, their crews too reliant on quantum technology to function without it. Coordinate with any ships that have functioning communication, Ala instructed the communications officer. We need to establish a formation using visual signals if necessary. Meanwhile, Admiral Keck had succeeded in activating the hydraulic maneuvering system, granting them limited control over the ship's movement. It was crude compared to their usual precision capabilities, but it was sufficient to begin evasive patterns. "Commander," called a sensor technician who had rigged a rudimentary electromagnetic detector, "I'm detecting energy buildup from the Vrection fleet. I believe they are preparing to fire their primary weapons." Ala nodded grimly. They knew the Confederation fleet was vulnerable. "General, what is the status of the railguns?" "We've managed to connect 7 of them to independent power sources," Octavian replied, his crystalline form now dulled with stress. "The ballistic calculations are inelegant, but should be adequate for close-range targeting." "Load them with whatever dense materials we can locate," Ala ordered. "Hull repair components, spare parts, anything that can cause physical damage upon impact." As the crew scrambled to execute her orders, the main view screen, now operating on a basic video feed rather than its usual holographic display, showed the Vrection flagship moving into firing position. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported suddenly. "Audio only." Ala glanced at General Octavian, who nodded his authorization. "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with a harsh, grating voice. "Confederation vessel, your technological superiority has failed you. Your quantum delusions have been exposed. Surrender now, and your crew will be permitted to live as subjects of the Vrection Empire." General Octavian moved to reply, but Ala raised a hand to halt him. "Let me handle this," she said quietly. "We need to buy time." The general hesitated, then nodded. "This is Commander Rhodess of the GCS Vanguard," she transmitted. "We acknowledge your impressive technological achievement." "Before we discuss terms," the voice stated, "we require an update on the status of our outposts that have already fallen to your forces." It was an obvious delaying tactic, and the Vrection commander's contemptuous laugh echoing through the speakers confirmed he recognized it. "Your solicitude for your doomed comrades is noted, human. I am Supreme Commander Rex of the Imperium flagship Devastator. You have 5 minutes to initiate surrender protocols before we obliterate your vessel." The transmission ceased abruptly. "Human," General Octavia remarked. "They specifically addressed you." "They detected that I was different," she replied, "which implies they are scanning us somehow despite our systems being offline." "What course of action do we pursue now, Commander?" Admiral Seek inquired, a question devoid remarkably of any trace of sarcasm or disdain. "We counter them with the unexpected," turned towards the tactical station. "Are the railguns operational?" "Yes, Commander. 7 guns manually controlled with targeting based on optical sighting." "On my mark, unleash all of them on the flagship. Aim for what appear to be sensor arrays or weapon emplacements." Valera then faced General Octavian. "General, I need your people's light-based communication capabilities. Can you signal the other Confederation ships with instructions?" Bizarissan nodded, his crystalline form starting to pulsate with intricate light patterns. "What instructions?" "Instruct them to employ any kinetic weapons they can activate. Ballistic, projectile, even physical ramming if absolutely necessary. The Virections anticipate our helplessness without our quantum technology. Let's demonstrate their error." As General Octavian commenced transmitting orders using his species' bioluminescence, coordinated the railgun crews. This was crude warfare by Confederation standards, more akin to 20th century naval engagements than modern space combat, yet it was their sole option. "Ren flagship is powering weapons," the sensor officer reported. "Energy signature escalating." "All railguns fire on my mark," commanded. She waited until the Devastator's energy readings reached their peak, indicating their weapons were on the verge of firing. "Fire!" 7 electromagnetic railguns, hastily repurposed from maintenance equipment into instruments of war, simultaneously launched dense metal projectiles at immense velocity towards the Vrection flagship. There was no quantum guidance, no sophisticated targeting algorithms, merely fundamental physics and the optical sighting expertise of the gunners. 6 of the 7 projectiles struck the Vrek vessel. On the view screen, small explosions were visible erupting across its hull where the impacts occurred. Crucially, the detected energy buildup suddenly fluctuated and dissipated. "Direct hits," the tactical officer exclaimed. "There, they've aborted their weapons charge." Across the fleet, other Confederation ships began emulating the Vanguard's action. Vessels that had managed to activate similar backup systems launched their own improvised assaults. These ranged from reconditioned mining charges to literal debris discharged from emergency disposal systems. The Vrexian fleet, clearly unprepared for this rudimentary form of combat, began to adjust their formation. Their disruption field remained active, preventing the Confederation from utilizing any quantum technology, but it offered no defense against simple kinetic projectiles. "They are shifting to a defensive posture," the Admiral observed, analyzing the enemy fleet movements. "They didn't anticipate physical resistance because they believed we were entirely reliant on advanced technology," said, "just as we were. They identified our vulnerability, but they failed to account for our capacity to adapt." General Octavian's bioluminescence had adopted a pattern never before witnessed by Valera. It conveyed something between respect and astonishment. "Commander Rhodes, I believe we may owe you an apology." "Later, General," she replied with a faint smile. "For now, let's keep firing those railguns." For the subsequent 20 minutes, an unprecedented space engagement unfolded. The Confederation fleet, compelled to utilize technology that would have been deemed obsolete centuries prior, gradually gained the advantage against the Vrexian forces. Devoid of quantum shields for protection, the Vrexian ships proved surprisingly susceptible to kinetic impacts. The Devastator, however, remained largely undamaged despite sustaining multiple hits. Its hull was clearly engineered to withstand physical trauma in a manner the smaller vessels were not. "There, transmitting again," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," ordered. The voice of Supreme Commander Rex once more filled the bridge, but this time a hint of uncertainty lay beneath his arrogance. "Your primitive response is unexpected, Confederation. Perhaps we have underestimated your resourcefulness." "Perhaps you have," she responded calmly. "Your disruption field targets our quantum technology, but there are older fighting methods that remain quite effective." "So I perceive." There was a pause. "A temporary withdrawal appears prudent. This engagement has been instructive." "Before you depart," said swiftly, "you should be aware that we are already adapting to your disruption technology. The next time we meet, we will be prepared on all technological fronts." It was a bluff, of course. They had no immediate solution to counter the Vrexian weapon, yet sowing doubt in the adversary's mind could be as potent as any physical armament. After another pause, Rex replied, "As will we, Commander Rhodes. This is merely the opening move in a longer contest." The transmission concluded, and on the view screen they observed the Vrexian fleet commencing its withdrawal, moving slowly at first, then accelerating into FTL. The bridge of the Vanguard erupted in cheers and expressions of relief that spanned all species. Found herself encircled by officers offering thanks and congratulations through various biological and mechanical means. General Octavian approached her last, his crystalline form now radiating a steady, respectful luminescence. "Commander Rhodess," he stated, his voice entirely devoid of its former condescension, "it seems the Confederation has much to learn from humanity after all." She smiled wearily. "From our past, General. Sometimes looking backward is the optimal way to advance." Admiral Keck joined them, his metallic form showing signs of strain from the unconventional interface with the hydraulic systems. "The fleet is reporting minimal casualties, Commander, thanks to your rapid thinking. However, the damage to our quantum systems appears extensive. We should commence work on a dual technology approach immediately." Proposed, "Maintain our quantum systems for their efficiency and capabilities, but incorporate analog backups that can function autonomously if required." General Octavian nodded thoughtfully. "A civilization that relies solely on one form of technology, no matter how advanced, is vulnerable to anyone who discovers a means to neutralize it." "Precisely," said. "Diversity isn't just vital for biology, it's essential for technology, too." As emergency lights flickered back to full brightness, signaling the gradual restoration of some systems, pulled out her notebook once more. On a fresh page, she began sketching concepts for a new class of Confederation vessels, ships that would integrate the most cutting-edge quantum technology with reliable analog systems, creating a hybrid design far more resistant to neutralization. "What are you engrossed in now, Commander?" Admiral Keck inquired, peering at her notebook with newfound admiration. "The future, Admiral," Ella replied. "Or perhaps a future that remembers its past." Over the ensuing weeks, the Confederation fleet underwent a transformation. Under Ara's direction, ships were refitted with dual technology systems. Quantum computers operated alongside analog backups, neural interfaces were supplemented by manual controls, and AI-driven weapons were complemented by physically operated alternatives. The Vanguard became the flagship of this new methodology, a testament to the strengths of both advanced innovation and proven dependability. Ara found her role shifting from observer to crucial advisor. Her seemingly primitive knowledge was now recognized as invaluable wisdom. 3 months after their encounter with the Rerection fleet stood on the newly reconfigured bridge of the Vanguard, observing General Octavian as he demonstrated the ship's enhanced capabilities to a delegation of Confederation leaders. "As you can see," the general explained, his crystalline form glowing with pride, "we can now transition seamlessly between quantum and analog operations. If one system is compromised, the other assumes control automatically." One of the delegates, a Thrillaxian elder, fixed all 6 of his eyes on Ala. "Commander Rhodess, I understand this paradigm shift was largely your initiative." "It was a collaborative effort," she responded diplomatically. "But yes, I did suggest that we might benefit from integrating older technologies with our more advanced systems." "A remarkable insight," the elder commented, "one that has potentially averted catastrophic defeat for the Confederation." General Octavian's bioluminescence flickered in what she now recognized as the Zorishan equivalent of a reminiscent smile. "I once asked Commander Rhodess about her backup plan, and she replied, 'You're looking at it.'" I didn't grasp then that she was referring not merely to her notebook, but to the human approach of maintaining links to their technological heritage. "We learned long ago not to place all our reliance on a single method," explained. "It's an ancient human adage." "We understand the concept now," Admiral Keck interjected gently, "and we are implementing it across the fleet." As the delegation continued their inspection, Ella remained on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The Vexians would undoubtedly return, and they would likely have adjusted their strategies based on their learning. But now the Confederation would be prepared, not only with the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but also with the wisdom to acknowledge its limitations. She retrieved her notebook, which had become something of a lucky charm among the crew, and jotted down a final reflection. "The most sophisticated technology in the universe is useless without the simplest tool of all, human adaptability." The Admiral approached as she closed the notebook. "The delegation is impressed," he said. "There's talk of promoting you to strategic command." Ella smiled. "I am content where I am, Admiral, on the front lines where theory meets practice. Where quantum meets analog," he added with a mechanical approximation of a chuckle. "Where the future intersects with the past," Ella agreed, tucking away her notebook. "Because sometimes the optimal path forward is to remember where you've been." Beyond the Vanguard's viewports, the stars stretched infinitely, filled with both peril and potential. Somewhere in that expanse, the Virections were formulating their next move. But for the moment, the Confederation had absorbed perhaps the most crucial lesson of all. That true strength arises not from abandoning preceding developments, but from building upon them. As if sensing her thoughts, General Octavian joined them at the viewport. "Commander Rhodes," he said quietly, "the Vexian ambassador has requested a formal meeting to discuss terms." "They seem impressed by our resilience," suggested, "and perhaps a little apprehensive about what other primitive surprises we might possess." "Indeed," the general's crystalline form shimmered with something akin to amusement. "It appears your backup plan may have secured us more than just a tactical victory." "That's the nature of backup plans, General," she replied with a smile. "Occasionally they become the primary event." Together, the three officers, human, Zerosian, and mechanoid, gazed out at the stars, each perceiving something distinct, yet sharing a newfound comprehension that in the vast complexity of the cosmos, the most straightforward solutions were sometimes the most potent. And that wisdom, unlike technology, never became obsolete.